So, Clay, first we had the Romulans in the Delta Quadrant, and now we've got the Cardassians in the Delta Quadrant. We're just pulling back all the races that we enjoy from our time with TNG, and they're going to make appearances here, spread the seeds like they did in that TNG episode where the alien race with the smooth faces spread the seeds to all the worlds, and we turned into different people. And here we're just going to have Lady Gul Dukat running around in State of Flux and running around with Kazon, I suppose.
Gal Dukat, if you will.
Yeah, Gal Dukat. That's better than what I had. Obviously, I hadn't had time to think about this. Yeah, we're going to be talking about State of Flux, which is the 11th episode of the first season of Star Trek Voyager. Came out April 10th, 1995. 1 of 9 in the Seska arc. Teleplay goes to Chris Abbott. Story credit goes to Paul Robert Coyle. Directed by Robert Shearer. In-universe date 48658.2, which is 2371. In this one, short little logline called State of Flux, an unknown Voyager crew member secretly sends information to the Kazon. I was a little bit surprised by this one because the way... I don't even know if this is a big problem for the episode, but it's something that I was noticing the whole time. I couldn't remember... I was going, the last time we saw the Kazon was in Caretaker, right? Like, I was thinking that the whole episode is like, we haven't run into them since then, I don't think. And then I confirmed it. The last time we saw them was in the pilot in Caretaker. I don't know how much of it is an actual problem. I was a little... The way they were treating the Kazon in this one struck me as strange in some ways. It kind of felt like they've had a whole season of Kazon adventures that I was not privy to and I wasn't seeing. And then, you know, like Janeway... shoots like a strobe light and it shows an image of a ship for a split second. And she goes, my God, it's the Kazon. And it's like, I wouldn't have been able to pick that out of a hat, but I don't know. Did that stick out to you?
She saw that ship for about half a second and she managed to spot it. She got a good eye.
The Kazon outline is identifiable as Michael Jordan's bald head. You know, they always did that test if you can identify that.
Yeah, I did notice that. I thought it was a little bit strange that they played them that way. However, I kind of preferred it because I didn't really like the Kazon that much in the Caretaker, and so having not seen them since then, this sort of felt like a bit of a reintroduction to me. The downside to it, though, is I feel like they are playing them a lot closer to like Cardassians or Klingons. So, in just the way that they present them and the way that they act and stuff. So, you know, that your mileage may vary with that, whether or not you wanted a brand new antagonist with a new outlook and stuff. But I think while the reaction did seem strange to me, I thought it did its job to make it a big deal, I guess. I wasn't totally sure what the status of them as a culture was, I guess, because I think if I remember correctly, I remember being kind of surprised that they had ships in Caretaker because they seemed so primitive. And then, again, in this one, they have very advanced ships, but they don't have like a replicator, and that's a huge deal. And I guess replicator is pretty exclusive to. I mean, it is technology that if it existed would change the face of the Earth.
Yeah.
So I did. It didn't bother me that they played them differently, and I think Janeway's reaction to it did enough heavy lifting to make them seem like a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a. I don't even think it's really a problem, but it sort of gave them a gravitas that I didn't think had been sort of earned at that point. I guess it comes back to like the show really hasn't set up why we're still running into Kazon, really. You know, like we talked about this in the Discord a little bit, but it's like they're going at incredibly high speeds in one direction. How far do the Kazon go where you're still running into them in a certain kind of situation? And I guess people have said that there's a the explanation is that the Voyager is like collecting supplies before it starts off on its mission. I find this to be kind of a silly excuse. I think I've talked about that before, because they should just go. They're going to find things as they go. They're not crossing Death Valley and they need to stock up at the CVS or something before they go across it. They don't know what's out there.
There's McDonald's all up and down 93. You're going to hit one of them.
I think that's what's most surprising about the Kazon, and I think it's probably one of the storylines that would be like, after you came up with the concept of what this series was, you would eventually, after thinking, oh, that's a great concept, and like that'll be really interesting, and they're trying to get home, you'll eventually, after you write a couple scripts, run into the realization that it doesn't make a lot of sense that they keep running into the same people over and over. But I don't think you would think of that right away as you came up with the concept.
Well, I think it's kind of an easy fix if you change what the Kazon are a little bit. And if the Kazon were closer to, say, like the Orion Syndicate or something like that, where they are a people or a crime syndicate or organization that has further reaches outside of that one planet, I think that kind of helps out a lot, because then you can just, there's plenty of reasons why you'd run into them at that point, depending on how wide their reach is. But yeah, it's it is strange if it was like I'm driving from Boston to New York and I keep running into guys from Peabody on the way.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's Connecticut. I just run into another guy from Peabody. Although in Connecticut you probably would, but
couldn't believe it. That's good. It's an accurate description of what the issue would be. And as you said, the Kazon aren't technologically developed enough where they make sense as a empire that is enormous, that the crew is going to keep running into, because they're kind of underneath all that. My other thing with the Kazon, which is, I don't think, at least my memory doesn't serve me in this case. Surprise, surprise. But I don't remember them being that much of a threat. And so I think that's why it feels weird the way they play it here, the way Janeway plays it. Being so scared of them.
Yeah, like I don't remember seeing them do anything that would elicit such a reaction from her. Right. In that sense.
Yeah, they're warriors, but not Klingon destroyer warrior types. Like, they don't just seem bloodthirsty for the sake of being bloodthirsty. I think it's maybe a problem. I don't really know what the Kazon are about at this point. They don't really seem to have a clear identity as to what kind of thing they are, besides just generic bad guys. But it even kind of undercuts it a little bit, maybe somewhat in the script. It might be one of those things where I'm just kind of overthinking it. But when they discover the Kazon ship at the start, Jane was like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. And then at the end of the episode, they're like, we could handle a couple of Kazon ships. Maybe not 5 of them, but we could take maybe 4. So it kind of undermines it itself.
That was the thing too, because I couldn't remember how big or how advanced exactly Voyager was. I thought from my memory, they were kind of underpowered or something. And so when whoever it was like, despite the advanced weaponry we have, it'll be fairly difficult to fight off 4 of these ships. I was like, why are they acting as though like the D6 or whatever, the D12? What's the Klingon one?
I think it's the B6, right? The B6 battle cruiser or whatever. Yeah,
but it's not like that guy showed up with 14 photon cannons on the front of it. So they do strangely overpower the Kazon, at least in perception in this for some reason. Do you think they have to though? Like, do you think if you don't, you end up with less tension to the story?
I feel like in a first season, I would have just let it ride, and I'd say, how is this going? And by the end of the first season, we can decide if we want to make a Dominion-style empire that we have to run into again and again. But I think for a first season, I think it's actually biting off more than it can chew to have recurring aliens. I think you could do the entire 15 episodes by just they never run into anybody over and over again, and they just have 15 sort of standalone episodes. I think that would be fine, and it's a way for a show to settle into itself before it decides that, no, the Kazon are going to be recurring villains for some reason, but we don't actually know what they are. And so I guess before we go further into it, what's your general sense of state of flux?
My first thought is if this was an Enterprise episode, the title would probably be State of Flux, which I would appreciate.
Yes.
But honestly, I don't know what it is, but Voyager Season 1, best first season of Star Trek I've seen out of all of them, I think, except maybe TOS.
It's probably out of all of them. Yeah.
It was another one that I really liked. Yeah. I thought it was really good. I mean, it's not breaking any new ground. It's kind of Star Trek 6 to a certain extent, but I just thought it was I thought it was a fun story that used the Maquis thing in a way that they hadn't really done in a bit. Put Chakotay front and center and actually had him deal with his position and how he was put in between the two worlds he's living in and stuff. Some fantastic detective work from Tuvok, which is the highlight of the show for me so far.
And some ice cold lines at the very end scene there where he's like, "How can I be honest with you today, Commander?"
Yeah.
Which I really love that line. I thought Voyager continues to hit 10 out of 10 ending scenes, even if they're not like completely necessary or completely like relevant in some cases. Like sometimes they feel a little bit tertiary, but just within the context of the scene, they're really strong. I thought Tuvok at the end of this was he had some great lines about like just great Vulcan lines responding to Chakotay, and Chakotay asking him like, "Did I fuck up? Is this my fault?" You know, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I really like that bit that he says where he says the demands on a Vulcan's character are extraordinarily difficult. Do not mistake composure for ease. I was like, that's a hell of a Vulcan line. That's really
good. A Deadwood line. That's a Deadwood line of dialogue. Yes. I think there. Do not mistake composure for ease is something that Garrett would say or something like that. Yeah. It's it was good. I don't know if I was negative on this one. I think that I really enjoyed this one, and I thought it was good. And as you were saying, I thought it took advantage of the setup in a way that was interesting. And I was reading that it kind of ties into the Kazon thing. This is one of the first pitches that the show bought, and it came from an outside writer.
Oh, really?
And the pitch was based entirely on Caretaker, which is why the Kazon kind of feel like they're popping up again because he just brought them up at that point. And why it also feels like it's hyper-focused on the Maquis Starfleet schism because there's nothing else to go on at that point.
Yeah, because shocker of shocker, someone read that first script and was like, oh, I see where the main conflict of the show is going to be. And then
clearly this has been
and then apparently the people who make the show did not read that.
I thought this one was good. I thought it felt just slightly more disjointed than some of the earlier episodes that I think have been a little bit better than it. It was, I don't think there was anything really wrong with this one, but it kind of, I think a lot of it is just along the lines of like how the Kazon pop up. I feel a lot of the stuff just pops up in this episode, which is 11 episodes in, just feels a little bit strange at this point and was a little bit distracting for me, even though I think, you know, Seska's been there since the start, so she's not a character that we're unfamiliar with. Sean spoiled a couple episodes ago the fact that this is going to happen with her to us, so we knew that something was...
I didn't even remember that. I remembered him saying something about Seska sticking around, but I did not remember what he said, so... It's news to me.
She's such a background character. Yeah, a background character earlier than this, and this is the first one where she's actually done something. I don't know. I might even have trouble really summing up what my thing was, but it just felt to me like it was somewhat choppy getting from point A to point B. And I don't know how much of that is like a fault of mine where I'm not really buying into it, or I just think that the placement of the episode is kind of strange. But I liked all the stuff that was in it, and I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's tough.
Yeah, I think structurally it's a little choppy, or if not structurally, because I think it hits the right beats at the right time. But I do think like the way that they transition into certain things could be a little bit better. The prime example being when Chakotay, when the first time Seska is suspected of being involved, Chakotay pulls her out of engineering and is like, "All right, you're going to work on the bridge with me," and she complains, and he's like, "There's no." You can't be. If I didn't trust you, you wouldn't be on the bridge. And then she's just like, "Well, screw you," and then just wanders off. and then immediately goes into sick bay and starts fucking with the patient. Not exactly the best move by Chakotay to take her out of the thing she's supposed to be, then just let her wander off instead of following her to the position where you could watch her the whole time. And it's like that kind of thing. It's like, all right, maybe you could argue that Chakotay is in that moment kind of like demurring to her and saying like, yeah, she's right, I shouldn't be so hard on her or something, but it just felt kind of clunky to get her into sick bay in order to look at the patient and stuff. So just kind of some stuff like that. I think connective tissue. I was actually surprised because I had no idea what this episode was about, and so based on the title and the opening cold open, I thought it for sure had something to do with the fact that Chakotay got shot in the stomach. I thought he was going to start phasing in and out of existence or something. I wasn't expecting a
spy thriller.
Spy thriller. So that was
title.
Nice.
Yeah,
it was a nice bit to do, and like I said, it brought back some of the stuff I wish they did more of. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's could be a little bit smoother in certain places, definitely.
I think, I guess originally the title of the episode, the working title was just Seska, but they thought it gave away what the answer was by the end of it. So they changed it to State of Flux, which it is a weird title. It feels like much more of a sci-fi title than what the actual content of the episode is. I think that while I like Chakotay, and I generally think that this is a really interesting way to show him as a man between worlds who's trying to navigate the politics of where his position finds him in kind of a Game of Thronesy way. I don't know if the episode does him a lot of favors, because I think that in the first place, I think he's a little bit stuck in that they're unwilling to really show him as a kind of like little finger string puller, where he is actually has to play politics with both sides at the same times. And the way they try to get around that by having him still be a kind of strict Starfleet officer who has ties to the Maquis but is ultimately going to side with Janeway against any of them is that they tried to cram this in as this is a relationship that he's had for a couple of years now. Right. And because they want to pack a little bit of like pathos into that decision that he's going to screw her over. I thought it would have been much more effective if he is just portrayed as much more sympathetic to the Maquis crew, in that he's grown up and like lived with them for a long time, and he doesn't need this romantic relationship. It's just the fact that he thinks that Tuvok and Janeway are paranoid about the Maquis, and he legitimately thinks that Seska couldn't have done this. I think that would have been a little bit more interesting than, no, I had sex with her and I have to defend her. Like that kind of sloppy, just lazy defense because he's been in a relationship. I was thinking if this episode had gone in a direction where it's more about the paranoia of Janeway and Tuvok and Chakotay, sort of like battling their within themselves about like which crew members can we trust at this point and what's gone wrong. Right. It doesn't go that way, but I think that's because Chakotay's stuck where he is.
Yeah, I think so. My biggest problem with Chakotay up to this point has been they have translated man stuck between two worlds into man who is very ineffective and ineffectual. And he doesn't have a big imprint on the action a lot of times. And I think this episode would have been a good episode to give him a little bit more agency and really kind of show where his decisions were coming from and what his point of view really was. And I don't think they did that. I think he's kind of along for the ride in this a bit. And he is getting pulled in either direction, but he's not really ever really doing anything for himself, really. He's just kind of like going down the line as everything kind of happens around him. And I think that's part of the thing is like that relationship thing. The relationship thing I feel like makes him feel wishy-washy for exactly the reasons you said, because now it's about personal relationships and dating history versus whether or not he actually does trust the Maquis people and whether or not he actually does believe that they are not what the Federation people say that they are. And so ultimately, yeah, he's just, I don't know, he doesn't come off as, I don't really know what the word is, but he doesn't come off as assertive as I think he could.
Yeah. I think a good example would be the soup scene where he's recovering and Seska brings him the soup that she had stolen. Mm-hmm. What I see as the problem there is, like, I really like that scene where Chakotay's laughing about it. She's telling it. Then she says that she reveals that she stole the soup she stole rations basically from the rest of the crew to give it to Chakotay. And Chakotay in the show takes a very Starfleet you shouldn't steal type thing, where I think Chakotay, as he's written, should probably be more of a, do you know what kind of problems this is going to open up for me? Like,
yes.
You can't do this because this is, like, I'm going to have to come up with something. You've got me in this condition. Like, I can't be going against the captain like that. It's not that he's righteous about you stole the soup and that's wrong. It's more that he doesn't want the Maquis crew members creating problems for him that he's going to have to deal with down the line.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with him throughout the show up to this point, is that he ends up being written as straight down the line Starfleet. Starfleet's the way things have to go, instead of being written as a guy who's in the middle, who has to maintain the peace and has to keep the ship righted.
Yeah. I like the actor. I think I could like Chakotay. He's just not particularly written very well. But
do you know how old he is at this point? Like the actor,
the actual actor. I can look it up. Do you think that he's older or younger?
I was just trying to wrap my mind around it because I couldn't tell, but I was like, I can't tell if this guy at this point in the show is younger than me, and I feel like he might be.
He's 41. He was born in 53. And this came out in 90. What did I say it was? 94? Is that what I said this came out in? 95. This came out so he's 42.
All right. For some reason in my head I figured he was like 35 or something, but okay, that makes more sense. Not that it matters.
He's got the hair color. They didn't gray him up artificially for the sequences, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. And would you want him to be? I think he's the right age for the character.
I do too. Yeah,
I think that's an appropriate. Yeah.
I like him, but again, I think they've just got him in this weird sort of like wishy-washy position where he's not really doing a ton. He gets stuck with the bullshit ancient Native American history lore crap. And
spirit animal gets brought up in this one. There's a sick burn from Seska.
It was great. That was great because she's like, "Go tell your spirit animal about it." And he's like, "I will."
I will. Freddy the Frog has a lot of good insight into these situations.
He doesn't like you. He's good. I just don't think they give him a ton to do at this point, and I think because his actual actions are so limited, his internalizing of the situation, acting-wise, comes off as ineffectualness. Ineffectualness? Is that a word? Sure. As opposed
impotence,
to...
if you want to go that far.
Sure, yeah. Instead of internal struggle, it just turns into sort of like a general impotence.
Yeah. We'll see if they fix it. I don't know if they will. I think he's the character that most... obviously suffers from the tone that they want this to be a Star Trek show, because I think maybe after him would be someone like B'Elanna, but I still think that B'Elanna's firiness comes through in a way. She's clearly a Starfleet character, but she's more difficult to deal with than some of the others. I kind of walk away from this one at the end, even though I enjoy thinking that I don't think that Chakotay. I feel like they just kind of missed the mark about what Chakotay should be concerned with in this episode, where it's at the end he's very upset about how could I let this have gone by me, and he has this conversation with Tuvok. How come I didn't notice this stuff? And I think that there's I don't think that they effectively capture the betrayal that Chakotay is supposed to feel from this, and I think that if he was more backing of the Maquis there and was more, you had more scenes with him and them, and there was a little bit more of this undercurrent of they are operating as like a shadow crew within the larger crew, that they have their own motivations and own goals and stuff like that. And him, and even the episode making a better case that it's not Seska. They try to do the cheap man, poor man's Chief O'Brien as the suspect, and it's like, this is not working. Maybe the least favorite scene is when Janeway calls in the poor man's Chief O'Brien, and he sits down, and Tuvok and Chakotay just stand right next to him and look down at him at the chair, and he's like, did I do something wrong? That's not good. And it's always Seska, so there's no, I don't think that the episode ever showed me that I should feel surprised and betrayed by Seska the whole time. You know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I wonder if it's a excuse me. I wonder if it's sort of like a conscious choice to not put the Maquis on trial as opposed to just a single person. It does, because it does feel like they're kind of hedging their bets a little bit and going halfway with the Maquis thing, even though they're bringing it up, by having her be essentially having this be a matter of a single person and not a matter of Chakotay putting his faith in the wrong people, so to speak.
Yeah. It was a bigger conspiracy in the teleporter episode, the Prime Factors, when there were multiple, like Tuvok and multiple crew members were actually involved. Yeah.
But, like this way it allows one person to be to blame, whereas I think if you went the other way, it puts that onus more on Chakotay, because now you're putting Chakotay's beliefs on trial as opposed to the actions of a single person, which I think is probably more interesting if you did it the other way. But I wonder if it was them sort of like just hedging a bit as far as whether or not they wanted to completely undercut the decision-making process or ability of this first officer so quickly.
Yeah, it would have been more, I think it would have been more interesting. I guess that's a good segue into, what did you think of Seska and her plot in this one? Like her general, her decision, what she did, and her rationale for it, I guess, are the three components of her character in this one.
I think it's unfortunate that they found out she was Cardassian, because if they hadn't, I think her explanation was actually kind of good, because she was essentially
as to why to give them the replicator.
Yeah,
you mean
before she turned into a cartoonish villain at the end, her explanation of, oh well, we're alone out here, we should be making friends, is not the worst rationale in the world.
Yeah.
But once she turns,
I thought it was befitting of a Cardassian. Actually, I can understand what you mean, but I thought that felt like a Cardassian point of view. I could see like Gul Dukat making that argument.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But yeah, once the eyebrows go up and the lighting gets harder, and she starts talking about ruling the Delta Quadrant with an iron fist, it's like, all right, okay, that is a little bit different. That's a little bit hard to get behind, but I think it's her plot was ultimately, I think, kind of like the other stuff in this. It was ultimately felt like it was sanded down a bit, and a more gray interpretation, I think, would have been more interesting all around. Because she does bring up, before they out her, or I think it's before, maybe it's in the process, I can't remember. She does put it all on Janeway and be like, because of this captain, this terrible captain who made an awful decision and went by the rules of Starfleet and the Federation, we are now stuck. Oh, yeah, it's because she said a Cardassian would have been home. This never would have happened to Cardassians. But like that is an interesting, if she's not immediately exposed as a Cardassian and so immediately portrayed as a bad guy, that's an interesting point of view that no one's really gone into at that point. And it, especially coming from a Maquis person who's like, they're trying to keep this peace. It's interesting as well. I'm not saying she doesn't. I'm not saying making her a Cardassian was bad, but it just does make things a little bit more black and white when I think there's some gray area that could be a little bit more fun.
Yeah, she's I like her rationale up until, like you were saying, the point where she's like, and we need to build an empire out here because we're never getting home. It's like, well, this seems a little bit far-fetched at this point. I buy it because it does seem very Cardassian. It feels like it's a layer too much, maybe, and it's an attempt by the show to portray her as she's one of the bad aliens. Therefore, this is a justifiable thing that she's done in that case, and we don't have to actually be concerned about what a human would do. Like her arc was interesting to me because, well, first off, this episode opened my eyes to the incredible danger that everyone's in whenever you ask for Earl Grey hot from the replicator, that it can just destroy your ship.
You know what?
So,
when they first went to that ship and everybody was like zapped into the rocks and shit, for a second I thought it was the Pegasus drive. Because isn't that what happens? Doesn't the ship like phase into rock or something like that? So I thought it was something connected to that.
Would have been a little bit more. I liked the replicator thing. I thought that was the most effective plot twist, which is like, oh, it's actually like a helpful technology. Yeah. At that point where I was like, oh, it's kind of a neat twist, I was also a little concerned. I was like, the episode isn't going to go with Seska is just trying to get these poor people some food, right? Like, that's not going to be. Hopefully that's not the way that they choose to go, and it's not. It's a little bit more devious than that. But I did, as you were saying, I like the fact that the replicator is kind of a neat technology that's a little bit underplayed in how revolutionary it is so far in the franchise. But a lot of people, if you don't have it, that would be like, wow, this is an amazing thing to have. Where I think that it sort of flounders a bit, or maybe not, maybe it doesn't flounder, but I find her arc there to be somewhat effective, and I think that they made the right decision to play her as someone who is trying to get something out of them by giving them a replicator technology. I thought that the episode itself had to work really hard to make that disguised and to like hide the fact that that's what's going on. So they make the replicator very dangerous. They make all this weird stuff happen. They make it so that B'Elanna has that very strange line where they're in a place that's, a billion miles away from home. And she goes, the only people I know who have a technology like this is us. And it goes, well, you don't know anybody out here, so I don't know if you can really draw that conclusion at this point that no one else has discovered it. But so I think that the episode had to dance around the fact that it had to hide stuff like that.
Well, you're right. Technically, she's not wrong either because she doesn't know anybody else. So
that's true. She's not lying. Yeah. As Tuvok says, she's being honest.
Yeah. As they say in Ghostbusters, she's telling the truth, or at least she thinks she is.
Yeah. The lie detector's not going to get you. I thought it was good. I don't know about her running off with the Kazon at the end.
Yeah.
That is weird. I don't know if that's right.
I was going to say the one change I would probably make, and this is probably me just still being bitter about how they played the Daniels thing in Enterprise. I would have had them not find out she was a Cardassian, but reveal it to the audience that she was a Cardassian and keep her on the ship.
Yeah.
So basically,
with the crew knowing what she'd done, you mean?
Yes. So she gets found out. They figure out it was her. She makes her appeal that's a little bit more gray than cartoonishly evil, and then they discipline her as needed. But as far as everybody on the ship is concerned, she's just a Maquis crew member who went out and did something that they shouldn't have done. Whereas the audience realizes, oh, there's a Cardassian on the ship, because it's weird because when they beamed her out of there, I found myself thinking, what the hell? What are the Kazon going to do with one Cardassian? Like, why do they need her? What benefit does she bring to anything that they're trying to do? I mean, once she's off Voyager, she doesn't have any technology. All she can do is be like, well, where I'm from, replicator replicates you.
Yeah, she has nothing to offer them, and in my mind, she should be. Well, what I guess they're trying to say is that she's much more interested in the power play than she is in getting home, which which is probably the most unbelievable aspect of that character turn. I think there is that like she's about power in this area as opposed to I just want to get the hell out of here. So I tried to do the right thing and to like get us home quicker.
Yeah.
So I would agree that I think that the show has gone in earlier episodes with enough of a reason of Janeway coming in and saying like, well, you fucked up, but I need every crew member I've got right now, and I can't afford to lose anybody except Seska is allowed to beam off and go elsewhere for that. So I don't know. I mean, she comes back clearly because there's 8 other Seska arc episodes that we have to get through. So
yeah,
we'll see.
It'll be interesting to see what she how she ends up playing with the Kazon going forward. I mean, I could see her rationalizing the situation and being like, all right, well, I mean, we're clearly not going to get home, so we may as well try to establish dominance in the quadrant, which is she goes off with the Kazon. Maybe that's what her thought is. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a very meta thing. I wonder if that, like, if you're thinking long term of the series, I wonder if that's an episode that comes in a couple seasons where people are like, we're never getting home. We're going to abandon ship at this point, and it's kind of a consideration. I still think it's early for characters to, because we've only seen them for a couple episodes. Who knows how long they've been traveling? But for them to give up already seems a little bit early for some of the crew to feel that way. But who knows?
Hey, remember in Discovery, in that short trek in between seasons, when the guy found the abandoned Discovery ship and hung out with the computer, and it was like way in the future? Did that ever amount to anything? I can't remember.
Well, the ship is becoming sentient in the last Discovery season that we covered, so it's that connection, I guess.
Okay.
You know, there's no timeline connection that's been played up yet. Because I think that's even after what has to be. That's after the latest seasons in the 32nd century or whatever.
Right, because it was like even like 1,000 years past that or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just wondering. Just popped into my head.
Nope. No answers. Although we haven't seen the latest season, so everyone else can fill us in if they drew some kind of connection to that short trek. I don't know. We're in the middle of Star Trek Picard. You can watch it on the Patreon channel. It might be over.
Loving
now,
it,
actually. So
loving it.
It might be over. So let's wrap. Do you have anything else you want to say about State of Flux, or should we go to Patreon thoughts?
Not like of substance, but I did really like the scene where it's Chakotay and Janeway and Tuvok in like the conference room talking about, it's when they reveal that there was the unauthorized transmission and stuff like that. For whatever reason, the way they decided to block that shot is with the 3 of them close enough that they could be kissing each other. And it's just
in a big room.
It's so tight. Like they had just the previous. I think it only stood out to me because the previous scene they were on the turbo lift, and so they're kind of that close by necessity. And then they cut back to them, and they are still just right up on top of each other as they're talking about this stuff. And then the door opens, and you realize how big the room is.
I noticed the blocking of that too. I really liked the blocking in the conversation of them walking down the hallway into the turbo lift and Tuvok giving like his only logical explanation as to what this could be. I really like. I know I go on about this, but I really like the Vulcan writing there, because what they do in that situation is that they have him give his list of reasons why it could be, but they stage it properly. They do the rule of 3 thing, which is like that rule of comedy, which is that if you're making a joke, the first 2 are the serious things, and then the third one is the funny one. There's like, it gives you a little bit of timing to get to the thing. But what they do for the Vulcans is that he's got 3 things, and the first 2 are clearly absurd, sort of. So like, no, that can't be it. That can't be it. Oh, I see what you're getting at, Tuvok. I just thought it was nicely constructed in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all of his options are correct, but they are not plausible at that point, but there's still options that he has to bring up. I just like
I actually like that too, because I didn't think of them as implausible. I thought of them as, oh, that's interesting. Like if he's putting out there, because, he's the Vulcan bringing logical blah, 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 and, whatever. And so for him to be like, well, one of the options is that it came from somebody else who's out here in the quadrant. I was like, oh, I hadn't considered that. That's interesting. But obviously, yeah, the two that he gives are the more far-fetched than the obvious one, which is someone from our ship gave it to them.
Yeah, what was the first one he says? In that he says,
I don't remember.
Someone's out here with the Federation. I can't remember. It was the most implausible one, whatever it was. Anything else for this one? I thought I had something else about it, but I might potentially. Oh, my favorite edited scene was the when the other two Kazon come on the ship and they kill the Kazon that's in sickbay. I know they wanted it to be a quick murder sequence, but I thought it was almost borderline comedy where they shank him with the ring knife or the ring needle, and then the thing immediately flatlines and the doctor goes, he's dead. In a series that has a franchise that has brought more people back to life from death than any other show, that doctor just gave up immediately.
What did they do like 2 episodes ago when somebody died and they brought him back to life, right?
Yeah, Kim died.
Harry Kim gets euthanized and sent through a transporter, and they bring him back no problem. But this guy's like, yep, nope, sorry. Yeah, that totally scene was also weird. That scene was also weird because it almost seemed like it was shot at half speed or something, because the way that they touched the guy's neck and then Tuvok like grabs the guy and puts him against the wall very. Yeah. It was very. I don't know. There was something awkward about it. It felt like it was a rehearsal or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's it seemed like an awkward scene to stage in any way that it feels like a realistic thing that's happening there. Not a great scene for the Kazon either. I don't think they're just kind of generic in that one. That's it, I guess. So we'll go to final thoughts.
I also like that scene when they asked to be alone with their Kazon brethren. Janeway takes the doctor over and she's like, is there any way that you could possibly tell them it's unsafe to move him? And the doctor's like, well, yeah, that would be true. She's like, oh, thank God.
Stress off my back. And I guess we'll just bring up quickly a little bit of Kes in this one. The show hasn't done much with her. She's kind of just the nurse now, I guess. I still like the character, but it felt like we've seen a couple episodes now where she is just a Nurse Okawa, like a main cast Nurse Okawa in the show for whatever reason. So
very little Tom Paris in this one too.
Yeah, he's been backgrounded too. He now drives the ship all the time. That's his thing. And Harry Kim just delivers exposition in this one, which is
that's another thing. We were talking about things that were a little bit clunky and transitional and stuff like that opening scene. It was fine, but my first thought was like, why did Chakotay go by himself to find her? Like Harry Kim's like, oh yeah, I think she's down in the caves, and he's like, all right, everybody go back and I'll get her. And why didn't he bring Kim with him, who knew where you know what I mean?
Where the caves were, right?
Yeah, it's just some of that stuff is a little bit awkward in the way that it's set up, but it's not that big of a deal. I think overall it was a pretty good story.
I wonder what that root tasted like. Must have tasted pretty bad. Must have been the worst tasting root that anyone has ever. Yeah, their foraging thing just never sits right with me. I don't really understand what they're doing there.
It's because they don't look desperate. They just look like they're walking around picking berries for fun. It doesn't. There's no desperation to what they're doing. Yeah.
I know Christian had posted a big explainer of the how the energy systems work on a starship on the Discord, but I find them looking for fuel to make sense, but not really food. Like, because everything comes from their fuel. They should just be concerned about we need fuel because that makes everything else. And they don't need to be digging up alien potatoes to eat. That just seems like a waste of time. So
give them fuel. We'll go to give them fire. Give them that which they desire.
Give them fuel. Their lifestyle does determine their death style, which will be coming up in an upcoming episode.
Greatest,
Thanks everybody for
Greatest song lyric ever. I should have brought. That's a good one. I should bring that up on the next Badass when Sean asks like for the most epic rock lyrics. My lifestyle determines my death style. Fran tick 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 tock.
It's only better than Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Yes, I'm madly in anger with you. That album's full of them.
Yep. Poor Metallica. All right, anyway, let's go to final thoughts here. Not final thoughts, it's time for patron thoughts. After we say thank you to everybody for supporting the show. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/thepenskyfile. Patreon.com/thepenskyfile. We're covering a whole bunch of stuff. Clay and Amanda have their Stephen King second string going on right now. There's some Batman stuff with Sean and Clay. There's me and Clay doing Picard and Strange New Worlds, which is what we're probably up to at this point. Every week you get content every week. You go to patreon.com/thepenskyfile. And as always, our Captain tier supporters get a special thank you. Special thank you goes to Ben Douglas, Tark Latif, Andrew Cholog, Joint Mango, Christian Bausch, Cal Barrett, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Michael Pond, Matt Cutler, Nick Sergey, Brandon Hells, Grim Santos, Sean, Bradley Killens, Paul 13 Hero, Kevin Reyes, Jordan Cooper, Darth Moss, Russell Elge, Stephen Min, HH28, Derek Zajac, Paulo Roscoe, Jake 123, Patrick Seba, Dave Davies, Poindexter G, Barry Wallace, Jamie Crow, Captain Brazick, Eric Avila, Jakey's Gamer, Kevin Lowry, Nick the Rat, William Scheisler, Rayhan Jaffer, Grapple John Zorn, Zane Majors, Olivia Pardur, Tom Hickey, Jose Hunter, ZWNF Remixes, Captain Munchausen, James McLennan, Jonas, Tommy Tango, Disbrada, Tuvix Must Die, Admiral Nakamura, Ed Mark Star, Chris McLaughlin, Royo, Jeremy Bourgeois, Rich for the Machine, J-Man, The Undiscovered Mikado, Robbie Duffield, Will Clay, Atanga Udom, and Artorius. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show and bringing the spice to these comments. If you want to support the show, you can leave comments about upcoming episodes. The Spice channel. I don't know why that popped into my head, but I'm just seeing squiggly lines and somebody wiggling the cable behind the TV to make them.
That's what happens in Dune. Properly. When you have one of those spice trips, it actually what you see is the squiggly
the picture
Spice channel. Just a bunch of snow and wavy lines and one boob.
What's the oldest person who knows, or the youngest person who's aware of what the Spice Channel was? I don't know.
I know. Yeah, man.
It's probably like how people used to think that what was that HBO show about the weird sex stuff?
Was it just called Real Sex?
Real Sex. Yeah. How I used to think like that was something dangerous and provocative as the high school,
right?
But it's just like 80-year-olds riding each other like ponies.
Every episode of that show was just about old people and like nudist colonies and shit. It was so disappointing.
Yeah. It was incredibly disappointing. It's the antidote to pornography, I suppose. All right, let's go to Patreon comments. You leave thoughts about upcoming episodes. We read them. There's a bunch. There's always been a bunch in these episodes. People love Voyager. Norman Buckwald says, so this is actually quite a good, intriguing episode. Yes, it's perhaps the first character retcon of many in the series, and to use a twist that only watchers who have watched other treks know about Cardassian spies is intriguing. The Kazon actually adds some interesting components. In Janeway's I don't like bullies and I don't like you to Cullah is absolutely awesome. 4 Leola root absent mushroom soups out of 5.
That is something interesting to think about, too, because, if you remember in the first episode, I asked if the knowledge buy-in for Voyager was higher than most other shows. And this might be an instance of where that is true, because they talk about Cardassian spies and they talk about the occupation and all that kind of stuff, but they give you zero context as to what that means. And so, I mean, if you say she's a spy, that kind of does the work for you, I guess. But like in reference to the Maquis and the relationship between the Maquis and the Cardassians, like that's all, you either know it or you don't. So
if this was a episode of Star Trek Picard, would we be going on that harder? Because to me, what that feels like is pointless fan service in a way that you're like, what the hell does any of this amount to? Like, why are you telling me this? What is the relevance here?
I think the difference is that there is relevance given the people and who are talking to each other. Like there is a connection, like to the Maquis and the Cardassians and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense that would be a an option, and I also think coming so quickly on the heels of Deep Space Nine, it doesn't feel as big of a reach,
Yeah.
So
I think that my problem with it is that it does not add much, but it's kind of this additional information that is supposed to feel more impressive than it actually is, which to me is like a hallmark of the modern Trek shows, where they'll have a thing and they'll say like, well, this is because this is a reference to this Star Trek episode, and that gives it gravitas. And it goes, well, it doesn't really. Yeah. It's just you're kind of connecting the dots.
Yeah,
I understand what you mean, though. It feels fine.
Yeah, if on Picard, the not Laris Watcher lady was all of a sudden revealed to be a Cardassian spy, I don't think that really does the show any favors, because that's not connected to literally anything. Although on that show, wouldn't surprise me at this point. They're just throwing stuff at the wall at this point, so maybe it will happen. Who knows?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
James McLennan says, what I find most intriguing about this episode is that there are two unrelated twists with Seska, because the fact that she's betraying the crew to the Kazon and the fact that she's a Cardassian spy do not necessarily go together, but rather seems like her genuinely trying to get home regardless of her race, which just serves to heighten the betrayal aspect, even though she actually betrayed Chakotay twice, if you think about it. I love when her cover is blown, her tone shifts into a signature Cardassian smarm, and while the likes of Mark Alamo and Andrew Robinson do it best, this actress had the added challenge of acting Cardassian without the makeup, and I think she does a great job. 4 no big deal, full-bodied, cross-species cosmetic surgeries out of 5. They turned Kira into a Cardassian. They can turn these people off of being a Cardassian.
Hey, they turned Reed into one of those Suliban guys 25, 50 years, 100 years ago, Yeah, remember they turn him into the Suliban so he can sneak down to the
that's right, in the prison planet, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
See, this is the curse. This is the curse I live with now. The show I know the most about is now Enterprise, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah, good callback. I would not have remembered that. Huh. Eric McGowan says, State of Flux, the twist with Seska was unexpected but interesting. Overall, it's a well-executed episode I enjoy watching. Also, this is the last time we'll see from Lieutenant Carey for a long time, which is too bad. Oh, that is too bad. I think he should have been utilized more as a recurring character in engineering who could play off B'Elanna. 4 out of 5. I'll miss that guy. He seemed like a fine backup actor to have in the show for situations like this. Latte Librarian says, for a minute there, I thought Seska was going to be Ileana, the missing Cardassian spy from DS9. If any ship needed a counselor, it's this one. Chakotay is going to have hella trust issues after this. Also, the Kazon look like mutated troll dolls. 3 secret identities out of 5. They have terrible hair. The hair is just distractingly awful hair.
Yeah, it's...
Looks like a soft serve that you fucked up with nuts or something like that. it's all over the place.
They are like... They veer dangerously close to like 1960s bone through their nose, quote unquote, savages.
Yeah.
They would do in cartoons and stuff. But luckily they're not that. They don't go that far.
Matt Ross says, with the introduction of the Leola route that quickly glosses over the Voyager's limited supplies, the tension of the Maquis comes into focus, and Seska raises a good point that they're trapped in this place, beset by enemies due to a poor choice from a Starfleet captain. The duplicity of Seska, which later comes back, is a stark contrast to B'Elanna's realization that she can work on a team and has self-worth. The replicator's failure is scary, and it makes you wonder how the testing on this device originally happened. Dialogue from Chakotay on who worked for him raises interesting questions as to his own naivete. 3 gold-colored ginger roots out of 5. Jonas, I can't think of much to say about this one. It's pretty good, not all that compelling. I will say that the ability to genetically alter anatomy and physiology in this universe is pretty ridiculous. Everyone's potentially an Odo. 2 out of 5.
I would have preferred if the reveal was accompanied by horrible flashbacks of graphic bone sawing and
the torture,
sex for some reason.
It's all mixed in there. Maybe this is... The hell is that guy's name? Ash Tyler.
Ash Tyler, yeah. One can only hope.
Boy, yeah. We watched it, but if someone held a gun to my head and was like, tell me the plot of Discovery's first season,
yeah.
I remember Ash Tyler. He was there. Georgiou was there.
Mirror universe, because that's always there.
Yeah, Mirror Universe is there. I guess that's true. Evil Lorca.
Yep,
it's all good. That kid Ben says, this episode almost made me give a shit about Seska. Almost. Can transporters just abduct any life it can get a read on? 3 double agents out of 5. How come the starships don't just keep their shields up all the time?
Great question.
That would fix that problem, right?
Well, don't they? Isn't it kind of like a generally perceived move of aggression to put your shields up?
It is, yeah. They always react badly when it happens. Yeah. But I'm just, it would prevent. It's like prevents kidnapping. It's like putting the little anklet on the babies that are born so that people can't take them out the door of the hospital and stuff like that. Just put it on there.
Especially if you have a saboteur on your ship, might want to close off all the avenues of escape.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that makes sense. She used the transporter. Because when I was watching, it was like, that's the Voyager transporter. Do the Kazon not have transporters? They might not.
I have no idea. Wait.
They might not, because they might have beamed them over.
So she used the Voyager
I think so. The effect when she beams out at the end, is a Voyager transporter effect.
Oh, how did she do that? Did she have like a remote control or something?
Yeah, it must have been. She must have done it from that console that Chakotay was so upset that she used in sickbay. It must have been the same situation.
Sure,
they
why
didn't
not?
Walk her out. Aaron Million says, I feel bad for Chakotay. Everyone under his command was to some extent a traitor. It's giving him trust issues. Good episode from a morality standpoint. I like the trap set for Seska. 4 Chakotay traitorous crew members out of 5. Point extra G, we get another great mystery to solve with Chief Inspector Tuvok on the case. Federation technology is so far ahead of the Kazon that you can see how something like a replicator would drastically shift power in the quadrant. The reveal that Seska is a Cardassian agent is a good twist, with her featuring significantly in the last few episodes. You can tell this was something they'd been planning for some time. We'll see how it plays out, but they're definitely trying to build up some stuff for the show to work out down the line. Calbert says, like last episode, this is a tantalizing glimpse of what Voyager could have been if it kept exploring conflict within the crew, and it's a fairly strong start to the overall disappointing Seska arc. If only she ran off with any species but the Kazon. Seska is the proto-Ash Tyler, and while Discovery played up the obvious twist and hinged too much dramatic character weight on it, I think that more should have been made of the Seska reveal. Maybe if she and Chakotay had been in a relationship these past few episodes rather than her just being that background character with the evil eyebrows. The show is finally doing something interesting with Chakotay by questioning his trustfulness and naivete, but then ruins it at the very end by saying, no, he's not flawed at all, and he learns nothing that could have been a turning point for him. The best character moment might actually be Torres saying she doesn't exaggerate, setting her apart from Scotty and the other engineers. 3 appearances of the 60s Batcave entrance out of 5.
I did also really like towards the end when Torres and the crew was over on the ship getting the replicator out of the Kazon ship, and Janeway frantically messages over and goes, I don't know how long it's going to take you to be done, but you got to be. And then Torres is like, no, we're done. We're on our way back. And she's like, oh, okay, great.
This is terrific.
Come on back. This is perfect.
A lot of B'Elanna being abrupt with Janeway, like multiple instances of it, where she's like, I need this done by, I'll have it done by tomorrow. I need it done by today. No, tomorrow. She goes, okay, that's it. I guess that's just trying to show her character or something. Benjamin Espinoza says, Inspector Tuvok is the best Tuvok. The return of the Kazon here cast them as a devious mix of Ferengi morality and Klingon honor. Killing their compatriot cast them in a dark light indeed. Seska's turn was one they couldn't see coming, but fans of DS9 knew her plot had the Obsidian Order written all over it. I truly love the final exchange between Chakotay and Tuvok, very much reminiscent of TOS Spock, Kirk, and Bones parlance. 4 poorly disguised ginger roots out of 5. It is a ginger root that's just painted with spray paint.
Yeah, that last bit about misery loving company, that felt very much like Kirk and Spock kind of dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a there is something important about a final scene, really. You really have to do something with them. I'm just like, Enterprise is the most recent one. Like, Picard doesn't really have ending scenes, so it's like Enterprise has been the most recently watched. And I don't think that, like, I think it just goes to show what Enterprise is in that Enterprise never had closing scenes that focused on character responses to stuff like that. It's where they kind of, as a character, sum things up in a couple lines about what they're feeling. Voyager's been doing it, though. They're good at it. They all weirdly take place with Tuvok sitting by the window, and someone comes up to him and it's like, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm doing this." But they're good. Otherwise, I think they're good. Patrick Seba. Seska's a spoonhead, that conniving bitch. Still trying to scratch Mr. Chakotay's itch, but drafting a team of Star Trek's best fiends on my side. I want her up on the pitch. 4 gooey space ginger roots out of 5. I'm slaughtering some of your poetry, unfortunately, Patrick. Changeling says, really like this one. Clever mystery, good character moments, awesome villain speech, and lots of crew members growing a pair and standing up to Janeway. Speaking of Janeway, she's so authoritative that she has everyone's blood on file, locks you away in your quarters if you're a suspect, but kill a person and you're free to go. If you think they killed the guy that would give you the answer, they might know too. But I digress. 4 Talaxians pointing at my groin out of 5. Good rating scale there. Royo says, the discussion of the possibility of another Federation ship being stuck in the Delta Quadrant is good foreshadowing, except Janeway ruins it by saying to her knowledge, no other Federation ships went missing. Clay said in the Caretaker review he wanted a Garrick-like character on the show, and Voyager has granted his wish. Due to the lack of serialization in Voyager, its Maquis past looms heavily over the ship in some episodes and is entirely forgotten in others, although perhaps this is a good thing in retrospect, as the self-contained stories can remain focused on their topic. This episode forms a good pair with Prime Factors, as they both world build around the Federation's level of tech and consider the ramifications of what even a single piece of technology can do to a civilization. It's also really nice to see the best moments of DS9 bleed into this episode, as Cardassian values are being challenged against Federation values on a whole different kind of moral battlefield. 4.5 out of 5. Erica Villa says, this episode revolves around the Kazon. I don't really have much to say about it, but I do have a general observation. You notice how all the Kazon look like Matthew McConaughey. Why is that? Food for thought. Anyway, this isn't so bad, is it? I take it at this point we're still pleasantly surprised, aren't we? Maybe the fact that you did Enterprise first makes Voyager's rudimentary comfort food 3-star level TV feel positively transcendental.
They do kind of look like Matthew McConaughey.
They do look like Matthew McConaughey. Christian Pouch says, some intrigue, some Kazons melted into the walls. What more could you ask for? Chakotay gets the focus after being mostly MIA, and Seska's great. I appreciate that. For as much as I wish Voyager stuck to ongoing storylines more, at least Seska has been in a bunch of episodes before this one. We end with another fantastic Tuvok scene, which introduces some all-time Vulcan quotes. Only thing keeping it from a 5, and I mean just barely, is that I'm never sold on Carrie being the bad guy. Me neither. Undiscovered Mugato says, what, little old me? I'm too busy for the doctor, honey. That's what I tell my wife when I slice my pinky in the barn saw, but I have to finish the bunny hutch by nightfall. Anyway, it turns out Seska wasn't the red herring. She was the actual herring. Other than her rather smooth transition to the foreground, this episode feels flat, never escalating toward anything other than her leaving. To which I say, don't let the transporter hit you where the wormhole aliens split you. 2 double-crossing, no-good spoonheads out of 5.
Pretty big.
Last one, Brandon House.
Pretty big swing on this one.
In terms of how people are responding to it?
Yeah.
Brendan Howell says, the only thing that detracts from this quite good episode is Neelix overacting and becoming a patronizing asshole, as usual. Poor Chakotay, unlucky in love. If New Trek had written the Kazon, they would have been a biracial matriarchy. Seska has more character than most actors on this show. 3.5 poisonous kylo fruit out of 5. Kioli? I forget how it was pronounced. I'll go with it. Thanks, everybody, for leaving your thoughts about State of Flux. As you were saying, Clay, a pretty broad spectrum of thoughts about this one. I can kind of see that. I can understand it, I think. But you can go ahead first if you want. You can give you a rating on our scale of 1 to 5.
It's tough. I feel like it... Did I give the last one a 4?
You did. I give it a 5, and you give it a 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is probably like a high 3. I don't think it's quite a 4 for me, but I think it's a really solid episode that Voyager just feels so much more focused to me than Enterprise, because it knows what its episodes are about, and then it executes that concept and theme. Whereas Enterprise never really did that to a satisfying level for me. But it's tough, because this is judging by the way people talk about this show and how it gets later, I wonder if this ends up as a 4 in a year or so, once we see what a 3 really looks like and what a 2 and a 1 really look like.
Yeah. I'm going to give this one a 3. I think this is a solid 3 for me. I liked it. I thought it was perfectly competent, and I thought it was enjoyable to watch. I just don't think, what's weird about it is that I think it's something. There's something in the execution that doesn't really work, because I would think that based on what happens in this episode, this would be one that'd be like, you should probably watch State of Flux, because that's got a lot of great Voyager Maquis crew interaction type stuff in it. And unfortunately, it just never really gets to that point where I'm like, this is worth watching. I don't know why that is. I think it just didn't fire on all cylinders for me. So I'll give it a 3. I thought it was good, but it wasn't really transcendent or anything. That's it. We'll both give it 3s, but it continues to be a pretty solid season of Star Trek Voyager for its first year. We only have 4 episodes left in the season, and then we're done with season 1. So quick, maybe 4 or 5. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for putting us into a state of flux and supporting us at patreon.com/thepensky-file. All that good stuff is out there. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, I've got a new book out. Well, it's a repackaging of an old book, but for all intents and purposes, a new book. It's a comic book called Poser. It's a horror punk rock slasher graphic novel. It takes place in the California punk scene. A lot of fun. You can get that on Amazon or at your local comic book store. And thanks for checking out all the other shows. Fuck, my mind I don't even remember what they are. Badass Podcast and Rotten
That's
Horror Picture
horror
Show.
podcast.
Yes. And thanks for supporting us as we go through the second string of Stephen King. And we'll have a new. By the time this is out, the newest Badass Patreon will probably be up, where Sean and I talk about the Red Hood comic that we wrote together that'll be coming out later this year.
Yep. Yeah, we're well ahead now. I think we're 5 episodes up. So we've got some time. There'll be stuff that has come out. Events of the world history have happened, and we're not commenting on them right now. But things will happen. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. We'll be back next time with... I always forget to click it forward, and the next one is called Heroes and Demons. The title's not doing much for me, but we'll see how the actual episode comes through. So
I thought
Heroes and Demons.
I thought the title was I always forget to click it forward, in which I thought, wow, what an ahead of its time title for Star Trek.
They saw that one coming. The next episode is called The One Where They Check Memory Alpha. We're done. That's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you later.